The first light of morning spilled across the town like a timid visitor, brushing the rough wooden planks with gold and dust. James Callahan, the giant of the town, sat alone in the workshop behind his cabin, his broad shoulders hunched over a pile of worn shirts and trousers. Needle and thread in hand, he moved with a careful precision that contradicted the world's notion of him. A man, capable of uprooting fences with his bare hands, yet now tenderly mending frayed seams. The smell of leather dust and boiled coffee lingered in the air, wrapping the small room in a familiar, comforting quiet. James had lived like this for years, the solitude pressing against him like a constant companion, and the townsfolk spoke of him with a mixture of awe and caution. A giant, yes, but a man whose heart had been tempered by loss and unspoken regrets. She arrived quietly, footsteps hesitant on the weathered boards. Ayanna Littlefeather, barely 22, carried a bundle of tattered clothing pressed to her chest, her dark hair catching the morning light, revealing strands kissed by copper. Her eyes, wary yet steady, scanned the cabin, taking in the massive frame of the man before her, the curves of his broad hands, the line of his jaw set in quiet determination. She had traveled far, carrying more than clothes, memories of struggle, whispered shame, and a hope that refused to be extinguished. "Just mend my clothes and leave before evening," he said, voice low and gruff, the words sharp enough to carve through the morning haze. There was no malice, only the bluntness of a man unpracticed in conversation, untrained in gentleness. His eyes flicked toward her briefly before returning to the fabric, as if her presence were an inconvenient interruption to his carefully ordered solitude. Ayanna lowered her gaze, brushing the edge of the bundle against her skirt. She was accustomed to rejection, to the quiet dismissal of the world. Yet something in the cabin, the rhythm of his hands, the intensity in his eyes, the almost imperceptible pause in his breath, spoke of a man unguarded in ways she did not yet understand. Without a word, she set her bundle on the floor and knelt to begin arranging the garments, the motion quiet and deliberate. Hours passed without ceremony. The sun climbed, throwing shafts of light through the cabin window, catching dust motes that danced like tiny spirits in the air. James observed her, unwilling to speak but unable to look away. She hummed a soft, haunting melody, a tune carried on the wind from her childhood, something gentle and persistent that tugged at corners of memory he had long sealed. His hands paused mid-stitch, and for the first time in years, he felt the stirrings of a thought too fragile to name. Outside, the town whispered. Eyes pressed against windows, tongues wagged over fences. Why was a young native woman here, alone in the cabin of the giant cowboy? Gossip crept through the morning air like smoke, curling around the corners of buildings and into the ears of those who listened too closely. Ayanna felt the weight of their judgment as surely as she felt the roughness of the cloth beneath her fingers. Her cheeks, usually calm and composed, flushed slightly with the awareness of prying eyes. James, though indifferent to gossip in principle, felt the flicker of irritation stir within him, not for himself, but for her, standing silently under scrutiny, carrying herself with quiet dignity despite the eyes that sought to diminish her. Their interactions were measured, deliberate. She handed him a mended sleeve. He caught it, his large fingers brushing against hers, and neither flinched. Small gestures, thread passed, fabric smoothed, a nod acknowledged, became the language through which they began to understand one another. Silence, they discovered, could be more revealing than speech, and glances more intimate than confessions. The cabin grew warm with unspoken connection, each moment layered with tension and curiosity, a slow burn neither fully recognized nor dared to name. By mid-afternoon, the subtle pulse of their connection deepened. Ayanna's hands worked deftly, restoring a coat with a patch that had long been torn, her movements graceful and precise. James paused, noticing the small details, the way her brow furrowed in concentration, the set of her shoulders, the quiet resilience in her eyes. He felt an unfamiliar surge of admiration, a pang of awareness that the life he had known, quiet, rigid, solitary, was suddenly incomplete. Ayanna, in turn, observed him with careful attention, recognizing the weight of history in his eyes, the loneliness etched into his broad frame. Where the world saw only a giant, she saw a man who had carried burdens no one else could measure. Then, as if the universe sought to punctuate the moment, a sudden commotion erupted outside. A young child, chasing a stray calf, stumbled into the street, danger flashing in his wide eyes. Ayanna, instinctive and swift, stepped forward without hesitation, guiding the child safely aside as the cart rattled past. James felt his heart surge, a mix of awe and something he had not felt in years: pride, respect, and a tender recognition of courage not born of brute force, but of quiet strength. The townsfolk gasped, the whispers ceasing briefly as eyes fell on the pair. In that instant, he realized that protection and honor were not merely about size or power, but about the courage to act with integrity. Evening approached, the golden light fading to amber. James set the last mended garment on the table, his large hands brushing hers once more, lingering in a way that startled him. "Perhaps stay a little longer, if you wish," he said, voice softer now, almost reluctant in its vulnerability. The words, simple and unassuming, carried the weight of an entire world's worth of restraint, fear, and the first glimmers of trust. Ayanna's lips curved into a quiet smile, one that spoke of hope and cautious optimism. She nodded, not fully believing the invitation, yet daring to accept the possibility. Between them, the cabin seemed to breathe, filled with the warmth of newfound connection. Outside, the town receded into the soft hum of evening, the gossip fading into the distance, irrelevant against the intimacy forming within those walls. The narrator leans closer, voice soft, as if sharing a secret with the viewer. In the quietest of places, with the hum of thread and the patience of hearts, lives are mended as much as clothes. Sometimes it is the simplest acts, a stitch, a glance, a silent nod, that change a man's fate. And sometimes in the stillness, love arrives not with fanfare, but with the steady rhythm of presence, courage, and unspoken trust. James and Ayanna stand side by side at the window, gazing at the small town bathed in evening light. The moment is unspoken, yet undeniable, a promise hovering, fragile but real. The giant cowboy, once a solitary figure among whispers of rumor, now glimpses a life that might hold warmth, companionship, and the slow unfolding of joy. Ayanna, who had carried her own burdens through long roads and sharper judgments, feels for the first time that she might belong, not just tolerated but valued, even cherished. The day closes not with grand declarations or dramatic gestures, but with the quiet intimacy of two souls recognizing each other, a slow-burning ember finally catching the wind. And as the sun dips beyond the horizon, the story pauses on the precipice of possibility, leaving hearts full and minds reflective, with the unspoken assurance that this is only the beginning of a life that could yet be extraordinary. Like, comment, or tell us where you're watching from.